Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance for an episode today where I'm going to react to my predictions for the Premier League last season. Some good predictions, some bad predictions. Let's get into it. Right, there's a lot to get into, so I'll just jump straight into it. Straight away, starting off with my prediction of who was going to get relegated last season. Did okay, not great. 1 out of 3. Just a reminder of who got relegated last season. So we've got Leeds, Southampton, Leicester, one I'll get into later, but one that is sad to see him go down after being up for 10 or plus years, however long that's been. Leeds, a shame to go down also, but I think some of the things they were doing, especially towards the end of the season, business-wise, kind of inevitable. This is the way it's going to go. But I'll start with Southampton because Southampton is the one team that I managed to predict correctly, which is quite a surprise. I didn't like so much the business they were doing. It's become a bit more evident that they are, or they were trying to do at least, was bring in younger players and try and develop them and develop a system almost like how everyone admires really at the moment, Brighton and Brentford, and bring in young players and, you know, use statistics to pick the right ones, blah, 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 Moneyball, being smart, everything like that. It's just in this case, it's kind of blown up in their faces. I think the same appointment of Nathan Jones, one that on paper, quite an intelligent one, someone from the Championship, a good manager, someone who might fit in, obviously one that backfired on them and they didn't really recover from that at all, and it's no surprise that towards the end of the season really they were just at the bottom of that table. So yeah, my other predictions not so good at all really, mainly because none of the teams that got promoted last season actually went down, which is quite a rare thing to happen because the two teams that did go down in the end obviously were Leicester and Leeds. My prediction was that I think Fulham and Bournemouth were going to go down. Fulham, I couldn't have been more wrong about Fulham. Really underestimated Marco Silva. Mitrovic did well scoring goals. They look like a really good team. Done really well this season. It'll be interesting to see what they do next season and to predict that. But right now, yeah, they've done a fantastic job. And Bournemouth also, I don't know how they've done it. Changing their manager halfway through the season. Gary O'Neill doing a fantastic job for some reason, not staying on. Sounds like something behind the scenes has gone on there that we'll probably never know about. I don't really know what's gone on because it seemed like he'd done a good job keeping them up. But yeah, I'm surprised they stayed up. 1 out of 3 in that case, not too bad, but it was definitely a bit unpredictable. It was very close towards the end of the season, especially with Everton being down there also. I was quite happy to predict that Nottingham Forest wouldn't go down. A lot of people thought they would. I thought they'd kind of keep their act together and just about make it, but I didn't think they were going to be fantastic, signing literally every player that's ever existed. Thought they would struggle, but I thought that they would at least do well. They had a good manager. They still do have a good manager, and they'll probably continue to build on what they've done, I imagine. So yeah, that's bottom 3. I've got through that pretty quickly because I've also got the top half of the table to talk about. Not too bad predictions. I mean, actually, I'm going to go through them now. There's some that aren't really that fantastic. Starting off with my first guess, actually, who was going to finish 10th place. I actually put Leicester in that position, which I look like a massive idiot doing that. At the time, I can't really remember my reasoning for it. I think it was that they had finished in that position before. They seem to be carrying on the same way. Brendan Rodgers is still a fantastic manager. They had good players there. They still have good players right now with Maddison and Barnes and Tielemans. But I did have doubts about Jamie Vardy being able to score as many goals as he has before. They can't keep relying on him. They'd also just transferred Schmeichel out as well, and it didn't seem like they replaced him with anyone. At the time of recording, I thought they were going to sign players, but they didn't really do anything. Because of that, they kind of deserve to get relegated. I don't think they really did well in the transfer market at all. They didn't really add on to what they'd built before. And yeah, 10th in the end turns out quite optimistic for them. In fact, I predicted Fulham to get relegated and they actually finished in 10th, whereas I predicted Leicester to finish 10th and they got relegated. So make of that what you will. In 9th place, a prediction that seemed pretty solid at the time and is somewhat wrong now. In 9th place, I predicted Brighton to finish there. A bit of a build on from what they had done last season. At the time, I really like what Graham Potter was doing. I thought they were going to carry on building on that, and they have kind of in a way, but not with Graham Potter. With Roberto De Zerbi, they've looked even more fantastic than they did before. And yeah, now they're playing European football next season. They've done much better than probably what they were expecting also. But it's not that surprising. They were a good team the season before. They've been a good team this season. They've really been building and building each year, and hopefully going into next season they'll be even better. European football will be difficult to manage, but hopefully they get the squad to deal with that, keep making smart decisions like they always have been. Hopefully they are a team that just keeps going on and on. In 8th place, it's another kind of disastrous prediction. I predicted Newcastle to finish 8th, and at the time thought that was kind of optimistic. But they've done even better than that, finishing 4th place, playing Champions League next season. It's unbelievable what Newcastle United have done, even with the money coming in. I don't even think they've spent that much, really. They have done very well. Eddie Howe has done very well. At the time, I was judging him somewhat on not being a manager that is managing the top half of the table. I thought they would in some way be a bit of a challenge for him, but he's risen to it and he's been really good. The fortunes have changed there, the environment there has changed entirely. 8th place, I think, was realistic. I think because of the support they have, both financial, from the fans, from the city itself, I think that has made St James's Park an absolute fortress. I think their home record has been pretty fantastic. It's probably helped them massively to get to where they are for Champions League football next season. In 7th place, I went for West Ham. I think that's where they finished the season before. I went for them finishing there again. I like David Moyes. I still like David Moyes. He's still done a really good job, despite not being the top half of the table. Obviously doing a fantastic job winning the Europa League. That's been fantastic. It kind of probably hurt their league standards somewhat, going so far in that competition and putting so much into that competition. European football, I think, always hurts teams in the league when they don't have the squad to deal with that, and maybe that's what the case has been here. So they haven't finished as high as they did last season, but overall, yeah, they have had a good season. I might have put them a bit high in my predictions, but not a bad season on the whole for them. Right, now we are getting into some of my actual kind of good, sort of really good predictions. In 6th place, I went with Spurs. That's not exactly where they finished. They finished 8th, even worse than what I thought they would do. But at the time, putting Spurs outside the top 4 was a kind of a big call to make, if I remember right. Everyone loved Conte. Everyone's forgotten this, but everyone loved Conte so much. They thought he was going to transform Spurs. He was going to make them this team that were going to fight for the title. I think I remember Gary Neville saying Conte and Spurs were the only team, or one of the teams, that could challenge Man City for the title. What a terrible prediction that was. I didn't see that whatsoever. I was pretty negative about Spurs at the time. They signed Richarlison, I think they signed Basuma as well. Conte train was running full steam ahead. All looked fantastic for them, but I just had a feeling it really wasn't going to work out. At the time, I think my reasons were, yes, Conte was fantastic, but it would be a long-term project really for him to develop something. It seemed that the club didn't really support him in that long-term project. It didn't really help him get the players that he wanted. I think the other reason I gave them finishing 6th because they had Champions League football also, and that is also obviously a bit of a drag. For whatever reason, it's one of my better predictions, Spurs not being in the top 4. In 5th place and finishing outside of the top 4, another fantastic prediction from myself. I predicted Chelsea to finish outside the top 4, despite, you could argue that probably one of my worst predictions, because Chelsea almost looked like they were going to get relegated, never mind finishing in the top 6. So yeah, not a great prediction, but also I think a pretty good one, because at the time, people did expect quite a bit from Chelsea with the new ownership coming in, with all the money coming in. The manager at the time being a good manager and probably would have done well to push them forward, but he didn't get to stay very long, as I think I kind of predicted quite well. Owners like to pick their own managers. They're not going to stick with the manager that they'd rocked up with, so it was kind of understandable that they changed the manager. I wasn't aware of how bad the decisions Chelsea were going to make, but I knew they would somewhat struggle adapting to new ownership. Better if I actually just play the clip of what I said at the start of the season, because it's probably spot on as to what was going to happen and what eventually did happen. So I'll just leave that there. New ownership and a new change is always a bit of a nightmare. And kind of famously, Chelsea don't keep managers for so long. I don't think Tuchel's quite proven himself last season, and he has to do really well this season to prove himself again. They lost Lukaku and really didn't utilise him last season, and as of yet haven't really found a replacement for that. Don't quite have that striker, if I'm thinking right. So there's a few things there that puts doubt in my mind as to how they will do. They still have great players and a great squad and everything like that, but a lot of teams in the top 6 do now. A lot of teams with a lot more organisation, a lot more structure, are being more consistent, and Chelsea can't afford the similar sort of slip-ups they had last season. They can't afford to have that again, and to me it just looks like they're on a bit of a downward trajectory. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with my Spurs and Chelsea predictions of what was going to happen this season. Everyone thought they were going to do pretty well. I didn't really think they were. I got them outside the top 4, not exactly where they finished, but yeah, I think pretty good predictions. And I'm pretty happy as well with my predictions for who was going to finish in the top 4. I actually looked a while ago at all the Sky Sports pundits and their predictions of who was going to finish where in the top 4. I got to say, I think my top 4 prediction is better than all of theirs. For one, in 4th place, I had Arsenal, and I think I was one of the only people to think that Arsenal could possibly finish in the top 4. If you remember, going back a time a little bit, they just finished the season before, lost to Newcastle, looked very poor, just finished outside the top 4. Everyone thought they were really going to struggle going into next season. Nobody really liked Arteta, but I've always liked Arteta. I always liked the project they've been building. Bloody hell, I didn't think they'd challenge for the title, but I knew they would build on what they did last season. That's why I put them in 4th place. I knew they'd have that confidence going forward after just missing out, knowing that they really deserved to be in the top 4. So I thought they would, just break into the top 4, but they've done even better than that. They made some fantastic signings. It looks like they're going to make fantastic signings this season as well. So yeah, they're building, and the Arteta project, everything he's been doing, I've been a fan of his since he joined Arsenal, really, and he's just grown from strength to strength, and Arsenal with him have also grown as well. Another reason why I think my top 4 prediction is probably one of the best ones is because I put Manchester United in 3rd place. I thought they'd finish 3rd. I was kind of being a bit optimistic at the time, but I don't think not a lot of people thought Manchester United would finish in the top 4, even with Erik ten Hag coming in. He'd only just joined. People didn't really know if he was going to be a good manager or not. I had a pretty good idea that he was going to be a really good manager, and I liked the stuff they were doing at the time, the way they were building, and even after the predictions I made, they made more signings. I think at the time they're looking at signing De Jong, and that obviously did not happen, but Casemiro came in and probably did a better job, did a fantastic job, really. I think the main reason, talk about psychology and everything, and there's lots of factors to that. I think the main thing, if you're looking at practically, is Casemiro has been a fantastic player, and he's held that team together very well. You can see that when they play without him, not so good. When they play with him, they're really good. And that's been a big difference for them, but they've had a good season overall. A big question of can they build on it next season has a lot to do with ownership. I'm definitely going to wait to make my prediction for next season, because with new owners, more money, different plans, yeah, it's wide open. But with things as they are, they can't afford to just stand where they are, really. They have to build. What's the next thing? What players do they need? They need a striker. They need a keeper. At least a keeper to challenge De Gea. They need a keeper. They need a midfielder. They need a lot of players. And they need money to do that. And with the uncertain situation at Manchester United at the moment, I don't know if they will. They might do. I don't know. And that's a big part of it. But for last season, this season, they've done well finishing 3rd. And Erik ten Hag has done a good job. That is the main thing. Stick with Erik ten Hag. Stick with Steve McClaren. I've heard he's a good coach. So stick with them. The only real stinker I had in this top 4 prediction is who I thought would finish in 2nd place, but I think a lot of people made this same decision. Everyone thought Liverpool were going to do well last season. There's no reason why they wouldn't do well. I still don't really understand why they didn't do well. I think I did mention at the time, and it is true, I think Liverpool are quite lucky, or they work quite well with their players so that they're not injured. They don't face a lot of injuries, because when they do get injuries, God, they really do suffer from it, because they do not have that squad. And I think there's another aspect of it also, I talked about it a few episodes ago, with Jurgen Klopp really having that 7-year cycle, and not really having the ability, and that's one criticism I've got of Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, is he didn't really build a new team within the old team that he had. He didn't rejuvenate that team, build something new. He's in the process probably doing that right now, but I compared him at the time to Sir Alex Ferguson, someone who had 2 or 3 top teams really and transitioned into them and kept that transition going and planned quite far ahead. I think Jurgen Klopp's fallen a bit short on that, and because of that he's struggled this season. I think the season coming up might be a different story, but right now I think they did quite well to finish 5th actually. So good for them, but not good for me in terms of my prediction. I'm finishing 2nd, and that leaves 1st place really. The most boring prediction. You predicted it. You knew it was going to happen. It's not really, you don't have to be a genius to figure this one out. Man City are always going to win the league. They just signed Haaland. He's a fantastic player. Only idiots, I mean idiots, thought that Haaland was going to struggle this season. Some terrible predictions of what Haaland would do, but nobody thought he'd do this well, and he has done fantastic, and he has done a lot to contribute to Manchester City's season this season. Like I said, I think back then also Haaland was to come in to win the Champions League to help them do that, and he has done that job, but he's also got them an FA Cup and a Premier League title as well. They've had a fantastic season really. There's no denying it, and it looks like I've talked about before, there's no stopping it either. It's going to go on and on. They've got the money, got the manager, they've got the players coming through. If I'm going to make my predictions for next season, yeah, I don't think things are going to change for Man City, really. Only teams may possibly challenge them, but that is the only extent of it. So yeah, that is my prediction. It was my prediction of what was going to happen last season. Not that bad, not that great. Some teams really not where they're supposed to be. There's some honourable mentions there that I haven't talked about. Teams like Aston Villa, for example, I didn't think they were really going to be in the top 10. Steven Gerrard, not a fantastic manager, not really been well proven yet, let's say, and I didn't really like the stuff they were doing. I've been critical of the signings that they made, the recruitment that they have there, I think rightly so, but Unai Emery's come in and I think he's tied it up and set up a way of playing. They signed Danny Ings when he already had Ollie Watkins anyway, didn't know which striker to use. Got rid of Danny Ings, seems to be a bit more streamlined there at the moment, and Unai Emery really has been the difference, a very underrated manager. But yeah, Aston Villa finishing 7th, which is fantastic for them. Another honourable mention as well. In Brentford, I talked about them getting relegated last season, but they've done really well, building on last season. I imagine going into next season, they'll probably build on that also. I can't imagine them doing worse, maybe a little bit better, but they're definitely a team I'll be looking at more often in the future, kind of alongside Brighton as well. Two teams that are very data-driven, very organised, and each year just building and building. But yeah, that was a bit of a bigger episode going through all those teams. They were my predictions. What do you think of my predictions? Do you think they're alright? I think I know what I'm talking about a little bit, maybe. Sometimes. But yeah, thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you again next week.